yaitu dengan diresmikannya Universitas Terbuka.
Berdiri pada 4 September 1984, UT langsung berlari untuk menciptakan inovasi dan terobosan baru dalam bidang pendidikan tinggi terbuka dan jarak jauh di tanah air. Lahirnya UT membuktikan komitmen pemerintah untuk memeratakan akses pendidikan tinggi yang berkualitas tanpa batas. Hampir 2 juta alumni UT tersebar di tanah air dan mancanegara dengan beragam profesi dan keahlian. Hal itu menunjukkan UT telah berhasil melaksanakan mandat pemerintah. Kemajuan teknologi, perubahan kebutuhan masyarakat, tuntutan pemerintah, menjadikan UT sebagai institusi pendidikan yang matang, kuat, dan visioner.
Dengan status baru sebagai perguruan tinggi negeri Badan Hukum atau PTNBH, UT tetap pada jati dirinya, yaitu menyediakan akses pendidikan tinggi yang terjangkau biayanya, terjamin kualitasnya, dan tersebar layanannya.
Status PTNBH ini membuat UT sejajar dengan PTN lain yang sudah lebih lama didirikan. Status ini juga membuat UT semakin otonom dalam pengelolaan akademik, tata kelola, pengelolaan keuangan dan aset, serta sumber daya manusia. Empat 43 program pendidikan jenjang diploma, sarjana, magister, dan doktor yang ada saat ini dapat dikembangkan lebih cepat sesuai dengan permintaan dan kebutuhan masyarakat. Menyadari kompleksitas, pekerjaan, koordinasi, dan tuntutan akurasi yang sangat tinggi, UT mengembangkan berbagai aplikasi.
Semua aplikasi itu disatukan dalam digital learning ecosystem.
Dengan selalu mendapatkan opini audit laporan keuangan wajar tanpa pengecualian, UT senantiasa berkomitmen penuh untuk menjadi institusi pendidikan tinggi yang transparan, akuntabel, efektif, efisien, dan ekonomis.
UT menerapkan standar yang tinggi untuk bahan ajar, proses pembelajaran, dan asesmen hasil belajar. Dengan demikian, para mahasiswa dimanapun mereka berada diharapkan akan memiliki standar kompetensi minimal yang sama.
Jejaring kerjasama yang kuat membuat UT menjadi institusi yang semakin berkembang, maju, besar, dan terpercaya.
Bangkit dan maju bersama dalam tatanan baru UT PTNBH.
Welcome to the public lecture of Universitas Terbuka. The topic of our today's lecture is the assessment for learning related to the assessment of language in language teaching course MPBI 5201. Let me convey a pantun to start this event. Indah berbalam si awan petang, berarak di celah pepohon ara, pemanis kalam selamat datang, awal bismillah pembuka bicara. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. To start our activity today, let me introduce myself. My name is Desi Yulinda from Batam. I'm one of the students of Universitas Terbuka. It is an honor for me to serve as the moderator for our today's activity. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We appreciate you take time off your busy schedule for joining us today. We do hope that you learn a lot today, as we have a lot of plans for you to be fruitful and engaging. Before starting our public lecture today, allow me to mention several rules for this event. Number 1, please turn the camera on during this lecture. Number 2, please attend this lecture by using the virtual background provided by the committee on the chat box. Number 3, please turn off the microphone during the lecture section. Number 4, please write your questions relating to the lecture on the chat box, or you can raise hand to ask questions by the end of this lecture. Number 5, please fill in your complete name and correct email address at the given link on the chat box by the end of the whole session for the certificate of attendance. We would like to remind you that you do not need to write your attendance, such as name, your registers, student's registration number, or where you're from in the chat box as the evidence of your attendance. Dear audience, allow me to greet our honorable guests today. The first one, the honorable keynote speaker, Bapak Profesor Nur Hidayanto Pancoro Setyo Putro, S.Pd, M.Pd, Ph.D. Good morning, Bapak. The second one, the Honorable Head of Pusat Pengelolaan Penyelenggaraan Program Pascasarjana, Universitas Terbuka, Ibu Dr. Juleha M.A. Good morning, Ibu.
Good morning, Mbak.
The third one, the Honorable Head of Master of English Education, Ibu Dr. Johanna M.Pd. Bu Johanna, good morning.
Morning, Bu Desi.
And the honorable participants of today's public lecture on this day, Saturday, April 15, 2023, with the topic of assessment for learning. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin our lecture today, we would like to start this program with a prayer. Let us take a moment of silence according to our respective religions and beliefs. This praying will be for 1 minute and starting now. Dear respectable audience, to begin with, allow me to share the rundown for today's public lecture agenda. Our first activity, the ongoing opening by moderator. The second one, listening to our national anthem, Indonesia Raya, continued by the hymn of Universitas Terbuka. The third one, welcoming speech from Ibu Dr. Siti Juleha MA as the head of Pusat Pengelolaan Penyelenggaraan Program Pascasarjana Universitas Terbuka, who will officially open today's public lecture. The fourth one is a lecture from our keynote speaker with the topic of assessment for learning, particularly in English language teaching, followed by question and answer session and closing. Dear respectable ladies and gentlemen, now we move to our next agenda, listening to our national anthem, Indonesia Raya, followed by the hymn of Universitas Terbuka. The audience may remain seated during the song. Ladies and gentlemen, stepping to our next agenda, which is a welcoming and opening speech from the head of Pusat Pengelolaan Penyelenggaraan Program Pascasarjana Universitas Terbuka. Please welcome Ibu Dr. Siti Juleha MA. Ibu Siti Juleha, the time is yours.
Thank you, Bu Desi. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang terhormat Profesor Nur Hidayanto, Pancoro, Setyo, Putro, S.Pd, M.Pd, Ph.D, Guru Besar Fakultas Bahasa, Seni, dan Budaya dari Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta. Yang terhormat Dr. Johanna M.Pd, Ketua Program Studi Magister Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris Universitas Terbuka. Yang kami hormati para pimpinan dan para dosen pada program Pascasarjana Universitas Terbuka. Yang saya banggakan para mahasiswa program Pascasarjana Universitas Terbuka, khususnya mahasiswa program Magister Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris Universitas Terbuka dan peserta kuliah umum lainnya dimanapun saudara berada. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan, Rahayu. Puji dan syukur kita panjatkan kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Tuhan yang Maha Pengasih dan Maha Penyayang, yang karena atas rahmat dan karunia-Nya serta nikmat kesehatan kepada kita semua, sehingga kita dapat bertemu secara daring dalam acara Kuliah Umum Program Magister Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris dengan tema Assessment for Learning. Saudara mahasiswa, perlu saya mengingatkan kembali bahwa profil lulusan program Magister Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris adalah lulusan yang memiliki kompetensi dalam mengaplikasikan pengetahuan dan keterampilan dalam pembelajaran bahasa Inggris. Salah satu keterampilan khusus yang harus dikuasai oleh mahasiswa untuk dapat melaksanakan profil tersebut adalah kemampuan mengevaluasi program pendidikan bahasa Inggris secara komprehensif, baik evaluasi kurikulum, evaluasi proses pembelajaran, maupun evaluasi hasil belajar. Mata kuliah yang berkaitan dengan kemampuan ini adalah mata kuliah Assessment in Language Teaching. Melaksanakan evaluasi merupakan kegiatan yang harus dilakukan oleh seorang pendidik atau guru setelah merencanakan dan melaksanakan pembelajaran. Melalui kegiatan evaluasi, guru atau pendidik dapat mengetahui apa yang perlu diperbaiki dari proses pembelajaran tersebut supaya capaian pembelajaran yang telah ditetapkan itu dapat dikuasai secara optimal oleh para pendidik, para peserta didik. Dan juga melalui evaluasi ini, guru dapat menetapkan tingkat penguasaan peserta didik terhadap capaian pembelajaran yang telah ditetapkan. Istilah yang biasa digunakan untuk menjelaskan tentang evaluasi yang berkaitan dengan hasil belajar peserta didik adalah assessment. Untuk dapat melaksanakan assessment dengan efektif, tentu kita perlu memiliki pemahaman yang memadai berkenaan dengan konsep assessment tersebut, serta isu-isu umum tentang assessment. Jadi sekarang sudah muncul kembali istilah-istilah tentang assessment for learning, assessment of learning, dan assessment in learning. Nah, itu perlu kita pahami secara optimal, secara baik, sehingga teman-teman, para guru, para pendidik, itu dapat menerapkan konsep tersebut di dalam proses assessment yang dilaksanakan di sekolah masing-masing secara efektif dan optimal. Nah, mengingat pentingnya pemahaman dan keterampilan para guru atau pendidik dalam melaksanakan assessment, untuk itu dalam kesempatan ini program Magister Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris Universitas Terbuka sudah mengundang Profesor Nur Hidayanto Pancoro Setyo Putro S.Pd, M.Pd, Ph.D, Guru Besar dari Fakultas Bahasa, Seni, dan Budaya Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta sebagai narasumber. Beliau akan berbagi pengetahuan tentang assessment, khususnya assessment for learning dalam pembelajaran bahasa Inggris. Assalamualaikum Prof. Nur Hidayanto.
Waalaikumsalam Bu Siti Juliha. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Prof. Atas kehadirannya untuk berbagi pengetahuan dan pengalaman bersama para mahasiswa dan dosen pada program Magister Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris Universitas Terbuka.
Insya Allah.
Terima kasih juga kami sampaikan kepada Dr. Johanna M.Pd, Ketua Program Studi Magister Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris dan seluruh panitia yang sudah memfasilitasi terselenggaranya kegiatan kuliah umum ini. Terima kasih Bu Desi Yulinda, mahasiswa program studi Magister Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris Universitas Terbuka yang akan bertugas sebagai moderator pada kegiatan kali ini. Assalamualaikum Bu Desi.
Waalaikumsalam Ibu.
Terima kasih Bu Desi.
Sama-sama Ibu.
Kepada semua mahasiswa, kami sampaikan selamat mengikuti dan menyimak kegiatan kuliah umum ini. Semoga wawasan dan pemahaman saudara tentang asesmen dalam pembelajaran, khususnya untuk pembelajaran bahasa Inggris, semakin bertambah yang pada akhirnya Anda akan terampil melaksanakan asesmen tersebut dalam pembelajaran sesuai dengan tujuan dan fungsinya. Baik Bapak Ibu peserta kuliah umum, untuk memulai acara ini, mari kita sama-sama membaca basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Saya buka secara resmi kuliah umum program Magister.
Mohon izin Ibu, mute Ibu.
Mohon izin Bu Siti, Ibu termute.
Oke. Sekali lagi, tadi udah saya buka ya Bu, udah. Baik, kepada semua mahasiswa, sekali lagi kami sampaikan selamat mengikuti dan menyimak kegiatan kuliah umum ini. Semoga wawasan dan pemahaman saudara tentang asesmen dalam pembelajaran, khususnya untuk pembelajaran bahasa Inggris semakin bertambah, yang pada akhirnya kita semua, Bapak Ibu, teman-teman akan terampil melaksanakan asesmen dalam pembelajaran sesuai dengan tugas dan fungsinya. Sekali lagi terima kasih kepada semua pihak yang sudah berpartisipasi. Selamat menjalankan ibadah puasa bagi yang sedang menjalankan ibadah puasa. Selamat berkarya dan terus belajar, tetap semangat dan salam sehat selalu. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much Ibu Dr. Siti Julaiha MA for the welcoming and opening speech. Thank you Ibu. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we proceed to our main agenda of today's lecture. There is a lecture on assessment for learning in English language teaching. This lecture will be delivered for 45 minutes, and I would like to inform you that question and answer session may also be carried out during the explanation session from our speaker. If there are points that are not understood, or if you want to ask the question directly, you may put the raising hand icon. Moreover, there will be a question and answer session at the end of our lecture. You may also write your questions on the chat box or put a raise hand icon if you want to ask a question later on. Dear audience, before we begin, allow me to read the curriculum vitae of our keynote speaker today. Complete name, Profesor Nur Hidayanto Pancoro Setyo Putro, S.Pd, M.Pd, Ph.D. With educational background, Bachelor of Education from Yogyakarta State University, Indonesia, Master of Education from the Yogyakarta State University, Indonesia, Doctor of Philosophy from the University of New South Wales, Sydney, Australia. Experiences. Expert staff of the Vice Lecture of Students Affairs, Yogyakarta State University, Head of the English Language Education Department. Recent publication, Structural Relationship Among Students-Teacher Role Strategies in Promoting Autonomous Language Learning, 2022. Revisiting Thomson's Multicultural Disposition Index in the Pre-Service English Teacher Education in Indonesia, 2022. Pre-Service Teachers Literacy of Assessment for Learning, 2022. Profiles of Undergraduate Students' Reading Attitude, 2022. Meta-analysis study, Effectiveness of Problem Solving toward Indonesian Students' Mathematical Reasoning Ability, 2022. Scales of Online Learning Readiness, Empirical Validation of Factors Affecting EFL Learners in Online Learning During COVID-19 Pandemic, 2022. Without further ado, please welcome our speaker today, Profesor Nur Hidayanto Pancoro Setyo Putro, S.Pd, M.Pd, Ph.D. Pak Nur, Pak Profesor Nur, the time is yours.
Thank you, Ibu Desi Yulinda. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
All right, the Honorable Ibu Siti Juleha, Ibu Juhana, Ibu Maya, Ibu Desi, Pak Bahtiar. I see also Pak Yanuar from Lampung, Bapak Ibu lecturers of MPBI UT, and also our beloved students of MPBI UT. It's a great honor for me to have this session because, I'm kind of not a real expert in this field, but I really just want to share with you all related to assessment for learning, something that teachers recently may have forgotten. And I'm pretty sure that later, if we have some discussion session, I'm pretty sure that some of you are more expert than me. It's like Pak Yanuar. Pak Yanuar is one of the kind of resource person for MBKM. So, if we want to talk about MBKM and something related to assessment in relation to MBKM, I'm pretty sure that he is also a good resource person here. Welcome, Pak Yanuar. All right, Bapak Ibu, allow me to share my screen. Hold on, where is it? There you go. Okay. All right, so this is the one that I'm going to talk about today. I hope that all my slides, I can cover all the slides here because I already prepared kind of 37 slides. And it's all about assessment for learning and mostly about teachers' role in assessment for learning. Well, Bapak Ibu, okay, these are the 5 topics that I'm going to cover today. The first one is about the concept of assessment itself, and then some common issues in assessment, and later we'll have a quick look at assessment of, for, and as learning, something that have been tangled up recently, and the next one is related to teachers' roles in assessment for learning, and what's next? What do we need to do next? So to start with, I'll share something on your chat room. In your chat room, there you go. I sent you a message in your chat, Zoom chat room. Kindly click on that message and you will be directed to this, Mentimeter page. Okay, so in 2 words, what comes to your mind when you hear the word assessment? So I'll spend kind of 2 to 5 minutes to have a quick look at what comes to your mind when you hear the word assessment. So again, kindly, all right, can see that there are some responses already. Okay. Wow, all right. Measurement, improve learning, test to students, evaluate, understanding. Okay. Yeah, some more are coming. Okay, I'm expecting some more responses because we do have like 88 participants. All right. Penilaian, to evaluate, measure. Okay. All right. Some more. A test for students. Okay, learning, competence, reviewing, evaluating again, measurement, monitoring. I think I'll just need to wait for another 1 minute. Okay, some more coming. Okay. Test, evaluation, formative and summative. All right. Evaluation again. Checking understanding. Okay, so I think, yeah. See, as I told you just now, I mentioned just now that all the participants here are already expert. So in today's session, I'm not going to give a lecture, but we'll just have like a sharing session actually with Joanna, yeah? Because everyone here knows a lot about evaluation, assessment and measurement. So I'm pretty sure that you are already good like praktisi in assessment, penilaian, and also evaluation or evaluasi. Okay, all right, thank you, Bapak Ibu. I'll stop the link now. Okay, I'll go back to my screen. All right, so from this kind of very quick digging on your understanding about assessment or the word penilaian, then I can see that most of you or even everyone has been expert in assessment, especially when we are talking about assessment in ELT. And now, so, well, if I have a look at the majority of research and also publications and also skripsi, thesis, and also dissertasi, the majority of these scientific works are mostly about instruction, English instruction. The thing is, when we are talking about EFL or TEFL, then it is not simply about instruction. Okay, it is a lot more than instruction, and something that has been under talked about or under researched is about assessment itself. So now we'll have a look at some terms related to assessment. So we do have here teaching itself, evaluation, assessment, measurement, and testing. Okay, so if we have a look at these 5 terms, how are they related? Probably I'll just need to invite some participants to share their ideas related to how these 5 terms are related. So now, if you want to share your ideas, just like Bu Desi, as the moderator mentioned just now, if you want to share your ideas, you're welcome. Silahkan Bapak Ibu. How are these 5 terms related? Anyone, please? Ya, Bu Titis, Pawiati, Epi. Silahkan, Bu Titis. Yes, Bu Titis.
Okay, good morning. So sorry that the microphone has been muted, so I cannot enter it. Okay, there are 5 things that must be related. Okay, the first is about, excuse me, I lost it. Sorry, sir, I cannot turn on my camera because I'm on the way right now.
All right, it's okay. It's
Yes,
okay.
okay. Okay, the first thing that we have to see is the process of teaching by the teacher, and then to know the progress of the student. The teacher must be evaluated, so they have the evaluation, and there are some kinds of evaluation. Can be testing during the process, and then the progress here to know the measurements of the student competence, and all the things here will be in the course of having the assessment, so all the measurements can be shown easily, can be seen. So by whole the process that had been done here, teacher know what's going on. So the assessment is the goal or the muara, and all the three others, testing, evaluation, and measurements, are the way to know how the teacher get the students' competence. Sorry if I make mistake.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, Bu Titis. Yeah, it's a great answer. Thank you, Bu Titis. So yeah,
Thank you.
Bapak Ibu, if we have a look at how these 5 things are related, well, some experts might have different relation. I mean, might show you different ideas about how these 5 things are related. But if we have a look at from Brown and Nabiwikrama 2018, then we can see here that these 5 things are actually interrelated. Some of these 5 things belong to other things. For instance, here we have a look at evaluation is the outer ring. I mean, the biggest ring here. What does that mean? So when we are talking about teaching and learning process, most of the time we need to see whether the teaching and learning process, program, or activities are effective, efficient, or not. How do we do that? We can do it through evaluation. Okay, so evaluation is normally conducted to see whether a program, a policy, or sometimes we can also use the teaching and learning process is effective and efficient or not. We can see it from the input and then context, input, process, product, output, or even outcome. And then inside this evaluation itself, we can also see the teaching and learning process. And in the teaching and learning process, I bet that you know a lot. Everyone knows that in the teaching and learning process, we need to see whether our teaching and learning process runs well or not, so we can assess our students' performance. And this assessment involves the measurement of students' performance. And one of them is through testing. So here, then, we can see from this multi-layered circles that, hold on, I cannot find my note. Okay, so we can see that here, testing is not the only thing that we can do to assess our students. We can also do some other different ways of assessing our students, let's say through a non-test, or some people say or call it non-test, and some other people will call it alternative assessment. So testing using multiple choice or essay tests are just one of the ways to measure and assess our students' performance. We can again and again do some other ways of collecting data about our students' performance. Let me just go ahead with the next one. So here, what makes the 4 things different? So if you have a look at this one, then testing is more into measuring person's ability or knowledge or performance in a given domain. And most of the domains is on the cognitive domain. Although sometimes we can also have the affective domain, but it's more into the measurement of affective domain. So here, when we talk about measurement, it is about the process of determining the amount of length and compare the result with, say, the standard. Okay, and then assessment itself, if we have a look at this definition, then assessment is more into the students or the learners. So we can always assess our students or our learners' learning progress and achievement throughout the teaching and learning process. Later we are going to have a look at some misconceptions related to the word assessment itself. And then the last one is evaluation. So if we have a look at evaluation here, mostly evaluation is conducted on a program, a policy, or sometimes we can also do it in teaching and learning process. But mostly it is for evaluation and, it is for program and or policy. All right. Then, is test the only way of collecting information related to students' performance? I mentioned it just now that we can actually do test and non-test or alternative assessment. Here, I'm pretty sure that Bapak Ibu are more than just familiar with all these things, this alternative assessment from performance task, conference, self and peer assessment. And we, in the world of EFL, are really, really flexible in conducting this one. We can do quite many different ways of assessing our students. And even if we have a look at the IKU, Pak Yanwar is more than just familiar with that one. If I'm not mistaken, it's in IKU 7 or something. Then to assess our students in undergraduate and master degree, we are suggested to use team-based and project-based. So it is not simply a test, but more into the real performance in the field. Because when we are talking about test, so testing is more into students' memory and facts and formula. But most of the times, it doesn't show a true understanding of those facts and formulas. This is due to the complexities of the concept, the complexities of the things, and also facts that we can include in our test. But when we are talking about assessment, we can do it throughout the whole process, and then we can really understand, get some information about the students' real understanding. That's why from the multi-layered cake, then we can say that assessment is a bigger concept than a test itself. All right, now, because I have a very limited time, I thought I have kind of 2 hours, but it turns out that I only have 45 minutes, so I'll just kind of rush here. Some common issues in assessment. So if you have a look at some common issues in assessment, then we can find some problems actually. So here, assessment and testing are not the same thing. Yes, I'm pretty sure that Bapak Ibu here already know a lot about this one. Assessment and testing are not the same thing. So from the multi-layered cakes and from the definitions that I provided earlier, then we can see that assessment and testing are not the same thing. Okay, and Bapak Ibu, all the students in MPBI UT are agent of changes. So I'm pretty sure that you know this one a lot more than me. And then the next one is most assessment is summative. Okay, so here I still remember that I have to menggunjing my teacher in the olden days. Whenever my English teacher came to the class, he simply came to the class and said, "Good morning, everyone." And then the student said, "Good morning. Okay, now how are you today?" And we said, "We are fine." Okay, now open your LKS on page blah blah blah. Okay, do exercise 4 and 5. Nur, how many correct answers did you have? So it's more into kind of, although it's not conducted by the end of the process, but it's not an interactive process. And most of the time, this kind of assessment, the real assessment, was conducted as a summative assessment. But if we have a look at the concept of assessment itself, it is not supposed to be simply summative. We can do it formative one, and we can later see how different assessment for and as learning in terms of the period of the assessment itself. And then the next one, assessment is a one-way communication. Yes, most of the time some teachers in the olden days believe that the teacher gives feedback on the student's work. So it's a one-way communication, and the students cannot complain or challenge the teacher's feedback. But recently, if we have a look at the concept of assessment for and as learning, then we can see that it is not it is totally not a one-way communication. It is supposed to be a two-way or even three-way communication. Students, peer, and teachers. And sometimes you also involve stakeholders inside. So it's not like a multi-way communication. And then assessment is for grading purpose. It's not supposed to be simply for grading purpose, but later we'll have a look at some examples of, some proofs that assessment is not simply for grading purpose. And student work should be given a grade or a mark. This is really torturing, especially for lecturers or teachers who believe that, all right, students' work should be given a grade or a mark. Then if we believe in this point, then we don't have like kind of free time. We don't enjoy our free time because we have to deal with grading and marking at any time. Okay, and that's the most difficult time for teachers and lecturers. Well, actually, we can also provide feedback in the form of non-grade or mark. And I'm pretty sure that Bapak Ibu also do this one. Okay, so the next problem is this one. Another common issue in testing. What's wrong with this situation? I'll just go to the chat room if there are any questions. All right, not yet. Okay, now I'll invite another participant to share your idea about what's wrong with this situation. I'm pretty sure that this picture is quite familiar. It has been around for years, so I'm pretty sure that you know this concept well. For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree with these 7 different animals. Okay, now I'll invite one participant to raise your hand and share your ideas. What's wrong with this situation? Pak Syarifuddin Marpaung is raising hand. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
Sorry, I couldn't turn on my camera. The signal is not so good here.
It's okay.
I'm an English teacher. I always find out this picture. So I just give the conclusion of this picture that a teacher should give the test or assessments for the student based on their learning style. So it means we could not force everyone can do a test without their learning style. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pak Marpaung. Okay, I'll invite another student, probably Pak atau Bu Rudi Umardani wants to add some more information. Please, Ibu.
Male student,
Okay.
sir.
All right, Pak Rudi, sorry, okay.
Okay, thank you very much for the given opportunity for me. I think, in my opinions, best idea that may represent these pictures to the utmost, dealing with the pedagogical perspective in this case, dealing with the learning mastery. Something that we must be highlight the circumstance existing in this picture, that its animals definitely have the different competence, and they are going to achieve their best performance. In this case, for their best achievements will be based on the different range of the times. So I think that's all, sir.
All right, thank you, Pak Rudi. Thank you, Pak.
You're very welcome, sir.
All right, yeah. So, Bapak Ibu, if we have a look at these pictures, then you can definitely see that these 7 animals have got different talents, right? Okay. A monkey might be the monkey might be the champion here, but the elephant, I don't think that elephant can climb. So here, then we can see that, okay, in our classroom, we can definitely see that our students have got different learning styles, different learning mastery, and different learning attitude. So here, something that is diamanahkan oleh kurikulum Merdeka is this one, Bapak Ibu. Differentiated assessment. Okay, so here we are not suggested to provide or use a single assessment technique to assess our students, to make a judgment, to get a judgment on their performance. But we have to make sure that we also use differentiated assessment. What I mean by differentiated assessment here is not simply different test items, but different levels of difficulties, different level of complexities, and so on. Close friend of mine, Ibu Laili Amin Fajaria M.Pd, is now taking a Ph.D. at UNY, and she's working on differentiated assessment. And she created a model for assessing EFL at junior high school, if I'm not mistaken. And her most work is on differentiated assessment. Okay, so here, Bapak Ibu, from this picture, then we can see that in our classroom, we cannot give like the same activity to all students. Okay, we have to realize that some students are really fast learners, some students are medium learners, and some students are, kind of slow learners. Then from this picture, we need to learn that, okay, being a teacher is not easy. You have to be very flexible. We have to provide different activities or similar activities with different level of complexities, in terms of the activities themselves, and so on. Okay, I'll just go ahead with the next slide. Another problem is this one, Bapak Ibu, or another issue is related to some instruments are valid but not reliable. Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure that Bapak Ibu are more than just familiar with the validity and reliability of an instrument. But if we have a look at these pictures, then we can see that some instruments are valid, but they might not be reliable, or the other way around. They might be reliable, but they are not valid. But so from this picture, you can see that all of them are valid, but some of them are not reliable because they scatter around and so on. So if we have a look at the validity and reliability of an instrument, it is a must to make sure that our instruments are reliable and valid. One of the biggest problems in assessment is this validity and reliability. I still remember that like in 2020, one of my students conducted a study on item analysis on the teachers made or MGMP in one of the kabupaten in Jawa Timur, and out of 150 items, only 15 items are valid and are good items. And then we can learn from that point that, oh my goodness, if it is only 10% of the instruments are valid and reliable, what happens to the result of the measurement? The result of the measurement might not be valid and reliable, of course. Okay, now I'll just go ahead with my next slide. Now, this is assessment for NS learning. All right, so this is the concept of assessment of and for NS learning that I got from and National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, 2017. So Bapak Ibu, we can see here that the concept of assessment of for and as learning are pretty different. So assessment of learning are mostly conducted for high stakes graded and or mid-semester exam. Okay, and it is expected to get some information about students' achievement only. And the result comes in the form of GPA, scores, or degree classification. But if we have a look at assessment for learning, have a look at this concept. Hold on, I'm trying to find the note. Where is it? Sorry, I cannot find the yang untuk nulis-nulis di Zoom-nya itu. Okay, so here, then we can see that assessment for learning is more into the ultimate objective of assessment for learning is more into improving the students' performance or improving the students' learning. Okay, and assessment as learning is more into improving students' self-regulation. So here we can see that, okay, they are pretty different. These concepts are kind of complex, but they are not actually complex. I believe that everyone here is already master in assessment. So I'm pretty sure that you are actually conducting assessment of for and as learning probably at the same time. Okay, so here from the teacher responsibility, we can find that assessment of learning, the one who is responsible is more into the teachers. Most of the jobs are by the teachers. But if you have a look at assessment as and for learning, most of the jobs are more into the students, although we need also to involve teachers in assessment for learning. But most of the times our focus, especially in assessment as learning, is on the students. Okay, now I'll just have a look at the different principles of assessment for and as learning. So from Chapwiz 2012, we can learn that, yeah, assessment as of learning is something that is commonly conducted by teachers, our teachers probably. Yeah. So here it normally occurs at the end of the learning unit, ujian akhir misalnya, atau ujian tengah semester sometimes. And it is accompanied by a number of letter or grade. Yes, you get an A, you get a B, you get 95, 67, and so on. And then it compares one student's achievement with the standards. So we do have penilaian acuan patokan dan penilaian acuan norma. And if we do have time, I will show you what makes them different. And the last one is results can be communicated to student and parents. So here we can see that most of the time, although the principles of assessment of learning are not simply these four, but most of the principles are related to these four items. So most of the times it is more into getting information about students' performance or achievement. That's the main objective of assessment of learning. What about assessment for learning? Oh my goodness, there are many different, aspects or principles of assessment for learning. Okay. Hold on, is there any question? Oh yeah, thank you, Budesri My Rosa. You already gave your ideas related to this different ability, learning style, and need. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay. Now we have a look at the principles of assessment for learning. All right, so the first one is a part of effective teaching. Yes, Bapak Ibu, if we are talking about assessment for learning, then one of the ultimate goals is to help to make sure that our teaching and learning process is effective. We have to make sure that, okay, our teaching is effective and efficient, actually. Whether teachers can help the students learn or not, whether the teachers already provided appropriate appropriate feedback on the students' learning or not. We can see it from assessment for learning. Then the next one, it focuses on how students learn. So it doesn't simply focus on the scores. Yes, we may get the scores, but that's not the focus. The focus is on how students learn. That's why most of the times assessment for learning is not conducted by the end of the session or in the mid of the session, but normally throughout the session or throughout the semester. And we normally use non-tests, although test is also involved in assessment for learning. And then it is central to classroom practice. Yes, one of the main ideas of assessment for learning is actually not simply for the students, but also to monitor, so that teachers can monitor their own performance in the classroom, whether they actually already help the students or not. And it has something to do with this key professional skill. And then it recognizes all educational achievement. Even a single achievement on the student's performance should be recognized by the teachers. We cannot simply use scores in judging our students' performance. Oh, dapat 90, berarti paling pintar. Oh, dapat 60. Oh, gimana sih kok nggak bisa-bisa? So we have to see the entry point. If the students who get 60 started from 20, then he has or she has made an excellent progress. But when the student has got 90 or 89 and then he only makes 1 point improvement, like say in 19, in terms of the scoring, yeah, although we are not simply talking about the scoring, but yeah, he or she doesn't show that great progress. So we have to see, we have to recognize all educational achievement. So how can we do this? How can teachers do this? Of course, teachers can only do this when they observe the students' performance throughout the session or throughout the semesters. Okay, ongoing process, a kind of endless process. A very simple improvement in their pronunciation should be recognized. Well, even a very small improvement in the students' affective or behavior should also be recognized. They used to be very anxious students, but then they turned out by the end of the semester, and the mid of the semester, they turned to be braver students than before, for instance, or not anxious students. It should be recognized, and they should be rewarded for this. Okay, and then the next one, it helps learner how to know how to improve. We tell them their weaknesses by providing them some information about their weaknesses. Then yes, of course, then we tell them what you can do to improve yourself. Develops the capacity for self and peer assessment. Yes, one of the most famous activities in assessment for learning is the involvement of peers. So we need to use peers to provide feedback on our students' performance. And then promotes understanding of goals and criteria. And the last one is sensitive, constructive, and fosters motivation. I think I only have 10 minutes left, so I'll just rush because our topic is mostly into the roles of teachers in assessment for learning. But Ibu, if you want, I will share you this, PPT, so that you can read a lot about the concept of assessment for learning. And now the next one is principles of assessment as learning. This is another important type of assessment. So here, the first one occurs throughout the learning process, similar to assessment for learning. And then it encourages students to take responsibility for their own learning. So if we have a look at the concept of self-determination theory by Ryan and Desi, then we can see that, okay, oh my goodness, our teachers in the olden days really didn't help the students to deal with their self-regulated learning. And then the next one, it encourages students to take responsibility for their own learning. Again, self-determination theory. Requires students to ask questions about their learning. They need to be able to monitor their own progress. They need to be able to ask to themselves, where am I? What do I need to do next? It involves teachers and students in creating learning goals. Yes. So most of the times we need to discuss with our students, all right, what do we need to do, or what do you need to master by the end of the semester? And these are the techniques, the ways that you need to do so that you can get there. Next one is it provides ways for students to use formal and informal feedback. Yes, formal feedback, non-formal or informal feedback are pretty important in the classroom. Not simply written feedback, but we can also use oral feedback and also feedback from the friends. Encourages peer assessment, self-assessment, and reflection. Again and again, assessment as learning is more into students' critical assessment on their own performance and also reflection. Okay, what makes them different? Well, there are quite many different things, but if I talk about them, then I'm afraid that I'm running out of time. So I'll just skip this part. Bapak Ibu can read them later. I already provided them on my slides. Well, quite many different, at least I included 6 different aspects or basis of analysis, starting from the purpose, definition, what points to be assessed, how to assess, the timing, and also the assessing method. reason and answering quality of assessment. Now, this is, I think I still have 6 minutes to go. The roles of teachers in assessment for learning. Well, if there is a question, what are teachers' role in assessment for learning? Well, I'm pretty sure that Bapak Ibu are familiar with this one. But most of the time when we are talking about teachers' role in assessment most of the times the answer is to be an assessor. But if we have a look at this concept by Dennis Alonso, 2016, he created an instrument to measure teachers' literacy in assessment for learning. Where are they? What they need to do? What do they need to do next? So here, Dennis comes up with these 6 ideas. The teacher's roles in assessment for learning. The first one is as assessor. The second one is a pedagogy experts. And then the next one is a student partners, motivators, teacher learners, and also stakeholder partners. So here, if we go back to the concept, to the framework of teacher's role of assessment for learning by Alonso, 2016, then, well, I myself would have to confess that I'm not a good teacher. I'm not a good lecturer, because most of the time I cannot push myself to be this multi-talented teacher. Okay, but I'm doing my best to do so. Now let's have a look at what do we have to do in each role. The first one, as an assessor, we need to design assessment tasks. Yes, we as teachers need to be able to create the blueprint of our assessment. Without the blueprint, then we might not be able to do the follow-up jobs, let's say item writing or task writing. And then we need to use rubrics to assess students' learning, not simply multiple choice. It implies that multiple choice is not the simply way, this is not the only way of assessing our students. And then it considers factors that affect students' performance. Remember, Bapak Ibu, then when we are assessing our students, especially if we simply use a test, then we can find that some students are really excellent, but some students might not be that excellent. But we have to consider that there are tons of different factors that may affect students' performance. They're psychological, let's say, problems. Because I remember that my students commonly say, or sometimes say, generasi strawberry. So I don't know why, but more and more students at UND, I think, are having problems with their psychology. Still have like 4 or 5 students in my department, and we have to cope with that because we are running inclusive learning or inclusive teaching. Effective behavior and some other things. Engages in social moderation. Bapak Ibu are now engaging in social moderation, upgrading your knowledge, upgrading your skills, and so on in terms of assessment. And then as a pedagogy expert, teachers need to be able to identify appropriate teaching methods. Yes, of course. There is no such a single best teaching method in this world. Sometimes we can use even eclectic teaching method. Sometimes we believe that the post method pedagogy even. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that Bapak Ibu are quite familiar with Kumarafadi Fellows post method pedagogy. And we need also to consider students' prior knowledge in lesson planning. Where are they? What do they need to do next? Current level of activity, similar to that one. Students' interest. That's why we do have the oh my goodness, I cannot really remember the multi-layered one. Okay, I'll just go ahead with the next one. Plan lessons according to students' learning needs. Yes, it has been shared by some students here. Tailors lesson to available resources. We can use any resources around us, not simply the ones that are high tech or high technology. With high technology, we can also use traditional materials, let's say printed version. Like printed materials are sometimes much better than the the technology-based one, especially if mati listrik atau there's a blackout or problems with the connection. And we are also a student partners. Remember that our students are not problem-free, Bapak Ibu. Our students may come to the class with tons of different problems. Sometimes they have problems with themselves. Sometimes they have problems with their friends. Sometimes they have problems with their environment, with other teachers, headmaster, and their other individuals. So here we need to be able to understand, okay, that, all right, I'm not going to judge you at this time. I'll give you another opportunity. Okay, by giving feedback, making them understand about the learning outcomes, and then self-assessment, allowing them to do self-assessment and peer assessment will help them a lot as our function to be student partner. Next, as a motivator. Okay, so here we need to make sure that our class is an open, let's say, it's an open class in terms of the facts that, in terms of that students can ask some information related to the feedback that we provide, related to the scoring that we provide to them. Okay, and affirm students' good performance, clarifies misconceptions, and so on. And then we are also a learner, Bapak Ibu. That's why the fifth rule of teachers in assessment for learning is teachers as learners. Bapak Ibu, our life is kind of a never-ending process. That's why in Muslim we do have tuntutlah ilmu sampai liang dari ayunan hingga liang lahat. And I'm pretty sure that some other religions also teach you the same thing. So we have to be able to, we have to push ourselves to engage in further educational or training, something that Bapak Ibu are doing now, to be a master in PBI or Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris. Okay, joining conferences. Pak Yanuar is quite a famous resource person in quite many different conferences and also seminars in EFL. So, you may want to contact him later. And the last one is stakeholder partner. We need to report to community about students' performance. Report the result to our parents, school headmasters, and also the school committee. So the results of this report will be useful for these parties or our stakeholders to provide feedback later to their students. Because without this report, we don't know, our stakeholders might not know what they need to do next. That's why, if I'm not mistaken, teachers are now required to write descriptive information about the students' performance. It's not simply about scores, but it's also about descriptive information or penggambaran deskripsi dari pencapaian itu. Do I still have time, Ibu Desi?
Please, Pak Nur, since the material is very interesting, so we will give extra time for you to convey those materials, Pak.
So how much time do I have?
Is it possible to have extra 10 minutes, Pak?
15 minutes?
Okay, Pak.
All right, thank you, Bu Desi. All right, yeah. All right, now I'll just go ahead with the next one. So what's next? Okay, well, I think this will be, this is the feedback that is provided by Davison in 2013 to help teachers develop their AFL literacy. As I mentioned just now, that Dennis Alonso is developing an AFL literacy measure under the supervision of Chris Davison, the one who has or who comes with these 7 ideas. So an AFL literacy program needs to consider where individual teachers are in terms of their AFL competence. So the one who runs the AFL literacy program should know a lot about the teacher's entry point. Okay, where are they? Where do they need to go? What should they do to get there? Okay, if they know a lot about AFL literacy, then we just need to push the trigger and they will get there in no time. But when we find out that, okay, some of the teachers do not know much about assessment for learning literacy, then we have to push them a bit harder. Okay, the next one, embedding the program in curriculum and assessment institutionally and pedagogically. Yes, we need to include the AFL literacy program in our curriculum and assessment, like let's say institutionally and pedagogically. Some let's say some programs in MGMP or some programs in some other bigger associations need to cover this one as well. Okay. And then the next one, use feedback extensively to provide information to individual teachers. Well, I will say that it is not easy to be a teacher here then, because we need to provide as much feedback as possible on our students' performance and provide as much feedback as possible to teachers. So there used to be a program from Japan. I cannot really remember the name. Teachers. It looks like classroom action research, but it's not a classroom action research. So one teacher is teaching in front of the classroom and other teachers are observing, simply observing, not commenting, not doing anything, observing the teacher's performance. And then once the teacher is done, then they come out of the class and then discuss the result. I can't really remember. It was from a project from Japan. And then the next one is develop the self and peer assessment capability of teachers. The program should be able to provide the opportunity for the teachers to develop their self and peer assessment ability. And then provide teachers with continuing opportunities to engage in. So it is not that easy, Bapak Ibu. Okay. Sorry, there should be kind of a thing that I missed one or some words here in like teachers need to be involved in more opportunities to be engaged in professional development opportunities. So attending sessions like this one, and then attending conferences, attending seminars, even online seminars are pretty useful. And then provide teachers with continuing opportunities to engage in further education. Yes, Bapak Ibu are doing it now. Okay, assessment for literacy is not only necessary for teachers, but also all stakeholders. I told you just now that, okay, assessment for learning literacy. I mean, the result of our assessment is not simply for the teachers. And here, the fifth, or this point by, I think this is the sixth, it should be the sixth. The sixth point by Davison is related to the teachers, stakeholders literacy on assessment for learning. So parents, students, administrators need to know well about assessment for learning literacy itself. And an effective AFL literacy program should recognize the diversity of teachers, just like the one that we had just now. I mean, assessment for learning. I mean, the case when we had the 7 different animals. Okay, the 7 different animals are being assessed on different on the same base, and it is not an ideal. It's not an ideal technique. Okay, so again, Bapak Ibu, this is the conclusion. I think I'm already there, Bu Desi. So teaching is not simply about instruction, Bapak Ibu, but teaching is also about assessment, assessing our students' performance, assessing our students' achievement, helping our students to grow better, to improve their capacity, to improve their to improve their skills, ability, affection, and also behavior. And here we need to involve at least these three different types of assessment. Assessment of learning to get the scores, assessment for learning to help the students improve themselves in terms of their cognition and affection and behavior, and assessment as learning to help the students improve themselves more into their critical self-regulation. Okay, so yeah, I think that's all for my presentation. Bu Desi, still have some backup, slides, let's say, related to the penilaian acuan norma and penilaian acuan criteria and some other slides. But I don't think that this is a good time to share this one. So I'll just stop here and we'll open the question and answer session. Okay. All right, if Bapak, Ibu, or all the but I don't know how should I address them, Bapak, Ibu, or Mas dan Mbak Bu Desi, or all the participants. If there are any participants having questions or something that you want to clarify, to confirm, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Nur, for the resourceful insight of the assessment for learning for today's lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, I would welcome you to ask questions or to ask for extra explanation from our keynote speaker today. You may turn the icon of raise hand on your screen, so we will know, we will notify who's asking the question. Bapak Ibu, please. Anyone would like to ask the question to Professor Nur? Raise hand and we can notify you.
Okay, we do have Pak Mumu, I think, Bu Desi.
Pak Mumu, please, Pak. Yes, Pak, please.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Answer, for giving me the opportunity to ask some question. Regarding the assessment or test that we have been discussing today, I would like to ask you a question. First is, I want to know whether we have to make a pre-assessment before knowing to know what the knowledge and skill that students have, and after that, after the learning process, we can make assessment. So how about that, sir?
Okay, should I answer it directly or should we wait for some other questions?
Let us collect for 3 questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Pak Mumu, where are you from?
Yeah, I am from Sukabumi, West Java.
Okay. So Pak Mumu asked whether it is necessary to conduct pre-assessment, right, Pak? Okay, now we have Pak Syafarudin Marpau. Please, Pak. Pak Syafarudin.
I'm here.
Yes, Pak, please, your question.
Thank you so much. Okay. My question is, what are the challenges that teachers might have faced when implementing assessment for learning in Kurikulum Merdeka, and how can they be addressed? Is the first question. Is it clear?
Yep.
Okay, Pak, how many questions do you have, Pak?
Second. Yes.
How many questions do you have?
Hello? Yes, okay, I have still one question, one more.
Please proceed, Pak.
Okay. Yes, okay, thank you. When implementing the assessment, do teachers give the assessment in every meeting or in a new theme or topic? And the last, how do we correlate assessment to the last test or examination or ujian akhir? Is it needed or not? Please give the explanation. Thank you.
Syarafuddin, where are you from, Pak? Pak Syarafuddin? Okay. Okay, we have two questioners. Now we move to Ibu Tuti. Ibu Tuti, please, your question.
Yes, Pak Nur, izin, do you mind to show again about your slide regarding with the misconception about assessment?
Okay, hold on, Ibu. I'll share my screen. Where is it? Okay. The misconception.
Misconception.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, sir. I want to ask a little bit about the point 4. In here, you state that assessment is for grading purposes. It is the misconception about assessment, and can you give more explanation about the misconception about this? Because sometimes we are teachers, sometimes we think that assessment is one way for us for grading grading to our students. So maybe can you give a little bit explanation about this, sir?
All right, thank you, Ibu Tuti.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bu Tuti. Now, Pak Prof, now we are going to answer the question. The first question of Pak Mumu from Sukabumi. Is it important to have pre-assessment, Pak? Please.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Bu Desi, for summarizing the question. The first question from Pak Mumu, should we do like a pre-assessment on our students before our sessions? Well, Bapak, I don't know if we have to call it pre-assessment or not, but this is actually, informal assessment on our students' cognition, affection, and also behavior. But it is definitely important to know who our students are, because if we do not know who they are, then it is pretty difficult for us to provide the best help for them if they need some help, or the best assistance. Let's say out of 30 students, you then notice from your first, second, and third meeting that, okay, I can do like kind of mapping on my students that, all right, Ika, Nuri, and Eko are kind of this kind of students. They are like good listeners, but they have problems with their speed of learning. Other students are pretty excellent, but they have problems with their attitude. Some other students are pretty excellent, and they are also well mannered and so on. So this kind of pre-assessment, we don't need to do kind of formal assessment to know their characters, to know their kind of attitudes. So we can simply observe them in the classroom. Sometimes we can also ask them questions. Then from this question, then we can, all right, this student is really excellent. This student is not really excellent. This student is pretty slow in their learning. Okay, the student, sorry, have to say, the student is troublemaker, for instance. But sometimes we need to do this. You need to give this troublemaker even the biggest, the biggest responsibility to be the, like, let's say, to the head of a particular project, classroom project on English, for instance. So it will help him a lot to be a good leader, because if we do not, some troublemakers are simply they do need some attention. But so some troublemakers are actually they simply need to gets our attention. And if we provide them attention, yes, it would be a good idea. So again, thank you, Pak Mumu, for the question. We do need to assess our students, but we can do it informally, Pak, through observation in the classroom, through interview, or through kind of giving them comprehension questions or some other questions. That's why if we have a look at the 6 roles of teachers in assessment for learning, then our role is not simply as an assessor, but we are also students' partner. We are also learners and students. We are also motivators. Okay, thank you, Bu Desi.
Thank you, Pak Nur. Now, the question from Pak Syafarudin Marpaung, Pak, there are 3 questions. The first one is the challenges for teachers in implementing of Kurikulum Merdeka, and then implementing the assessment, whether it is conducted every meetings or what is the exact time for the assessment. And the last one is correlation between assessment and the final exam later on. 3 questions, Pak, please.
All right, thank you, Bu Desi. Excellent questions from Pak Syafuddin. Yeah. The first one, what are challenges in implementing AFL in Kurikulum Merdeka? Yes, we always face challenges, yeah, then and now, Bapak Ibu. So, well, in Kurikulum 13 we did have challenges, and in Kurikulum Merdeka we also do have challenges. And one of the biggest, I do not know if it has been researched. Probably you may want to conduct your magister thesis in this kind of thing. Teachers' problem in implementing AFL in Kurikulum Merdeka, for instance. It would be a good idea, and it should be publishable. So if we have a look at these challenges, then one of the biggest challenges is related to the differentiated learning and differentiated assessment part. Because in Kurikulum Merdeka, we are required to do this kind of differentiated stops. We need to be able to recognize that, all right, some of our students are slow learners, so we need to provide him or her, we need to provide our students simpler activities with guided assistance. And then some of our students are kind of medium, not that fast learners, so we need to provide him or her with medium level of questions with some semi-guided instructions or semi-guided semi-guided guidelines. And for some fast learners, we can provide to them with free guided assistance or free guided activities. So this kind of recognizing and following up the result from differentiated learning is a real challenge for teachers, Bapak, because we will have to, of course, devote our time to observe our students, who is the fast learner, who is the slow learner, who is the medium learner, and then assist them later. Okay, you need to create at least 3 different levels of activities. But for, let's say you have 10 activities for one semester. If you really, really want to have a real practice on differentiated learning, then you have to create at least 3 times of these 10 activities, 30 different activities with low, medium, and for low, medium, and fast learners each. So if you have 50 activities in one semester, you'll have to make another 150 activities there. Okay, and then some. Well, I'm not that familiar with Kurikulum Merdeka at sekolah, although I'm not that familiar as well with Kurikulum Merdeka at the uni because it's something new for me. But yes, this is one of the biggest challenges. But there can be some other big challenges out there. Okay, related to how we need to cope with for instance, students' inclusiveness. Okay, we do have that one in universities, right? In Kurikulum Merdeka, let's say in MBKM, we do have inclusiveness, but and if you are teaching students with disabilities, it's another challenge because you have to learn 2 different things. That's if you only have one students with disabilities. If you have 5 students with disabilities, then you'll have to learn 6 different things at the same time. For instance, if one of your students is visually retarded, then you cannot provide them pictures. You'll have to describe the pictures. You cannot give them something scanned. You have to provide them with readable PDF or Microsoft Word to help them with their learning. Belum kalau nanti some other disabilities gitu ya. Yeah, but we have to respect them. The next one, do teachers do assessment in every meeting or at every topic? Well, it really depends on the techniques that you are going to use in a single period of assessment. But let's say within one semester, you can use multiple techniques of collecting information about the student's performance and achievement. Let's say you are using first test, and then you may also want to use portfolios. You can also use projects. You can also use, You can also use some other techniques of collecting information about the student's performance and achievement. But we do not do formal assessment in the classroom but every day. No, we don't do that every day. Otherwise, you are going to spend your time simply assessing your students. Assessment is a part of teaching process itself, so it should be one big part in addition to instruction and some other activities in there. Okay, so yeah, we can do informal assessment by observing our students, by asking them to do a project. All right, so by the end of the semester, you'll have to conduct a mini seminar, for instance. So one of you will act as the keynote speaker, 2 of you will act as the plenary speakers, 1 of you will be the moderator, another one will be an MC, and so on. And you assess them let's say you assess their speaking performance based on this project. And it is not a one-day project. It should be like 1 or 2 weeks project, for instance, at the uni level. And then how do we correlate the assessment and final exam? Yes, they should be used hands in hands ya, mungkin ya Pak ya. They are kind of apa ya namanya ya, melengkapi satu sama lain gitu Pak, if I may say. Okay, so in addition to the final exam, well, because some schools are still using this kind of final exam term, if I'm not mistaken, di Jogja itu we do have ASM, assessment. I cannot really remember what it stands for, but yeah, we do have this kind of, it's similar to final exam. But in addition to this final exam, we need to complement this final exam by using some other non-test or alternative assessment tadi, Pak. I do hope this answers your question. Pak Syarifudin. Thank you, Bu Desi.
Thank you, Pak. The question, Pak, from Ibu Tuti. This is about the misconception that assessment is for grading purpose, Pak. Please.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Assessment is not simply about grading. Yes, Ibu, because when we do have scoring and grading, because scoring and grading are pretty different, yeah. When we are talking about grading, we normally have a look at the students' scores, and then from that scores, we provide them, let's say, an A, B, or C. Okay, we do have scores, and then we do have the letters. We normally use letters for the grading, or let's say excellent, and then fair or poor, we use that grading. So as teachers, our job is not simply as an assessor. That assessment is not simply about grading. Assessment is also about facilitating the students, motivating the students, being a good partner for the students, being a good partner for the stakeholders, providing comprehensive information to our stakeholders, Ibu. So, well, I'm pretty sure that from now on, if we do really want to become a good assessor, a good teacher or a good lecturer, it's not a good job. Dan mungkin bayarannya kurang ya, because it's like a really tough job, because we have to be a motivator. We have to be an assessor at the same time. We have to be student partner at the same time. So it's not that easy, I have to say. But yeah, we learn to get there. We learn to be there. Inshallah, I'm pretty sure that Bapak Ibu can do that. And UT will facilitate you with, quite many different knowledge and also skills to be a good teacher. Thank you, Ibu Desi. Do we have some questions in the chat room?
Yes, Pak, but why don't we have the second session, Pak, because there are three.
All right, okay, yeah, please.
Hands. Yeah. All right, so we would like to invite Pak Rudi Umardani to ask the question, Pak, please. The time is yours, Pak. Pak Rudi, Pak, this is your time to ask the question. Pak, you are muted, Pak. Oh, it seems that Pak Rudi is facing trouble. We proceed to Pak Arif Eko. Pak Rudi, okay. Please, Pak Rudi.
Thank you very much for the given opportunity for me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Rudi, Pak. I'm from the Learning Program Unit of the Distance Education, Tarakan, North Kalimantan. I would like to propose two questions at the same time over here. Number one, what about, sir, if we would like to assess the student metacognitions? It is quite challenging because we need to assess the learning outwardly and inwardly. It means that we need to get closer in describing the meaning of the student achievement in preparation, actualization, and lastly, the evaluation. And then the second question, I would like to confirm about the best alternative assessment over here as dealing with the differentiation. As one facilitator once invited to my schools, she spoke that there will be differentiation in terms of the process materials, and the last is the assessment, sir. So my question is, what is the consequence, the specific consequence dealing with the obtained scores, and then the meaning based on the category, if my school apply the policies for the assessment, the standard reference-based measurement, sir? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Pak Rudi. Now we move to Pak Arif Eko. Pak Arif Eko, time is yours, Pak. Pak, please unmute your speaker, Pak. Your microphone. Unmute, Pak.
Hello, Des. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Desi, for the opportunity given to me. I would like to introduce myself before I deliver my questions. My name is Arif. I'm from Anambas, Kepulauan Riau. This is same province with Mrs. Desi. All right, actually, my question is same with Mr. Rudi. Actually, we know that today, every school was demanded by government to apply the curriculum Merdeka. Here, we should know that, we should realize that actually, our student is an individual that have the uniqueness of their own. It's related to the picture that's in the picture by Prof. Nur displayed to us. There is some kinds of animal with the different ability, but they should do the same thing. In here, I wanted to give my question. This is, what is the most effective and appropriate assessment for our student to know their achievement, in the study in the class? Because we know that actually by by meeting our student every day in the school, in the class, we know that actually they have a different skill. But the curriculum demand us to do the measure the achievement with one kind of assessment. In this case, maybe my understanding about assessment and the test maybe is still same with the with my understanding before. Maybe it's not like Mr. Prof. Nur said that actually assessment and the test is different thing, very different. So I just want to ask more detail, the explanation about it. Thank you, ma'am. That's all.
Thank you, Pak Arif. Your question seems to be related to Pak Rudy's second question, Pak.
Yes, right.
Okay. All right. So we have the third question from Ibu Darli, from female participants. Please, Bu Darli, time is yours.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, before I give my question, let me introduce myself first. My name is Darli Ovika. I am a teacher professional education student now. I'm sorry, I feel like I am late to join with this Zoom meeting, but I have seen your slide before, Prof. I see a point for student partner. Involves the student in the development of criteria and the standard. My question is, how do you involve the students to develop the criteria and the standard? Since I face a big class in my peer pre-teaching in the school. I have 40 students in the class. So how do we involve the students to develop the criteria and the standard? And what is the best strategy to involve them in developing the standard and the criteria? That's all. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, thank you. Professor Nur, is it okay if we have admit one more question?
Yes,
And-
Ms. Desi.
Okay, Pak Marlin, please. The time is yours. This is the last question from the audience, and then we are going to read the question from the chat box. Please, Pak Marlin, the time is yours. Pak Marlin?
Yeah, hello.
Ya, silakan, Pak.
Yeah, thank you, Ma'am Des, and the professor for the attention. Thank you so much for the change. I just want to ask about, we know that the assessment is essential component of learning process. When the learning process, sometimes teacher gave the question to the student, sometimes students ask question to the teacher in the learning process. I'm just asking about how can teachers encourage the student ask question in the learning process. Thank you.
Okay,
Hello?
Pak. Yeah, Pak, would you please repeat your question once again, Pak? Sorry.
Yeah, we know that the assessment is essential component of learning process. When the learning process come out, sometimes students ask questions to the teacher, and then sometimes teacher gave a question to the student. I just want to ask about that. How can teachers encourage a student ask question in the learning process?
Okay, thank you, Bapak.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you. Is my question clear, ma'am?
Yes, it's clear, Bapak.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Professor Nur, we have 4 questions. The first one is from Pak Rudi from Tarakan, Kalimantan. The question is about assessment, how to assess students' metacognition, and then the consequence to obtain the score in differentiated assessment. And this is also similar to the question from Pak Arif Eko Wahyudi, Pak, related to the differentiated assessment, Pak. So your answer will answer 2 questions from the 2 participants, Pak. Please.
All right. Thank you, Bu Desi, for the summary. Okay, now, thank you, Pak Rudi from Tarakan, and also Pak Arif Eko from Anambas. It's pretty difficult. They're pretty difficult questions to answer. Yeah, but the first one, I'll try to do my best to answer the questions. So the first one, assessing students' metacognition. What can teachers do in the classroom? Well, Pak Rudi, if we have a look at the different levels of the Bloom taxonomy, and so the different levels of the cognition, we do have the metacognitive level, and then we also do have, what is the lowest one? Oh my goodness, I even forgot the names, so sorry. So when we are talking about metacognitive levels, then we have to challenge our students to, well, kind of think themselves and try to, for example, provide a solution to a problem. I've got one slide which may be a good one to share. Hold on, where is it about? I'll try to do. Where is it? Can I get some minutes to have a look at my slides, Ibu?
Please, Bapak.
Okay. Was in. Okay, project.
Bapak Ibu, while waiting for Pak Nur, I would like to remind you, if there are still questions that you would like to ask, you may write it in our chat box. So we are going to read the question and answer them after this session.
Okay, thank you, Bu Desi. So yeah, this is a pendek pengetahuan saya, Pak Rudi. I'm doing my best to answer your question. So here, if we have a look at this, what is it? This example of the activity. So the name of the activity is making punishment fit the crime. So here, the students are placed to, let's say, they have to pretend that they are some juries and also some victims and also some the criminals. And they are provided with these problems. For instance, what? This is the first problem. Can you see my slide clearly?
Yes, Bapak.
Okay, so this is the example of the problem. Mercer and his wife Sarah had been married for 52 years. Sarah got cancer in 1980 and was dying. She had been in the hospital for 8 months and was kept alive by a respirator. Pak Mercer is 80 years old. On February 3rd, Charles Mercer went to the hospital and shot his wife. He says, "I loved her so much, I couldn't watch her suffer anymore." So when we provide these students with problem like this one, they have to think. It is impossible for students to simply use the lower level of cognition level and the Bloom taxonomy. They can't do that if they simply comprehend and they simply know about this one. They have to be able to evaluate the case. They have to be able to analyze the case and later come up with a solution to this problem. Because one of the activities in metacognition assessment is problem solving, just one of the examples. There are many other examples of different activities. So from this activity, then the students will have to be able to come up with a solution. What is the solution for, what is the best punishment for Pak Charles Mercer? Should it be life imprisonment? He's already 80 years. Another 80 years will make him die make him like a mummy in the mummy di penjara gitu ya. 160 years, not possible. Should we give him death penalty, or should we just leave him? I mean, let him go, because he didn't actually mean to kill his wife, but he simply didn't want to see his wife dying and suffering anymore. So through this kind of activities, the students will have to argue against their friends, because some of their positions are the pro and some of their positions are as the cons. Okay, some of them will be the jury and then some of them will be the defenders, kind of the defenders. So yeah, then they'll have to not quarrel, but argue against their friends. They have to use their arguments to say, all right, their punishment, the punishment is this one because he did this, this, and this. And then they have to, when their friends, let's say, said no, then they will have to provide some more arguments. Through this kind of activities, students will be trained to think harder with higher level of cognitive skills. It's more than just, higher order thinking skills, but combination between higher order thinking skills and metacognition. But it is not that easy, because this is related to debating. So one of the activities that you can do to do this is to debate. And it is not that simple, because in debate there are kind of many different styles, many different rules that we have to follow throughout the debate. But it is pretty useful. I still keep the book. The name of the book is Cannot Stop Talking. It's from 1992 or something, but it's still a very interesting book. I still remember the name of the book because I used to have a close friend. Her name is Nova, and Bu Nova is really, really talkative. So that's why I call this book Buku Nova, because she cannot stop talking. So yes, I still remember the name of the book because of her. Thanks, Nova. And then the next question is related to differentiated learning. If I'm not mistaken, what is the consequence if we cannot apply differentiated learning, and if we simply apply standard based assessment? Well, if I'm not mistaken, the Ministry of Education a couple of weeks or months ago declared that schools are free to use Kurikulum 13 or Kurikulum Merdeka. And if you're using Kurikulum Merdeka, one of the best ways is through differentiated assessment. But if you prefer to use Kurikulum 13, that's fine. You can still use the standard assessment. But, well, you can also do like coba-coba by using some Kurikulum Merdeka for some levels, let's say level 1 and level 2 or 7, 8 or 10 and 11, for instance, so that later then you can get some better information related to what Kurikulum Merdeka is actually. Because if we have a look, if we have a closer look at Kurikulum Merdeka, the mission is really excellent. I mean, the mission is good, more than just good. But it is the problem that when we have to deal with something new, and this something new is totally different from the existing one, it is a real problem. But I'm pretty sure that Kurikulum Merdeka is not that different from Kurikulum 13, and so we can still use Kurikulum 13. it's just like something funny that I still remember. If I'm not mistaken, in curriculum 13, there used to be bahasa scientific method, right, in teaching. And every teachers in English use scientific method in teaching. Do you know why they use scientific method in teaching? I still remember that one of the counselors from PSMP, Pak Joko Briana, Ph.D., shared this funny story in his speech. So it was because most of the sosialisasi, most of the persons who do the sosialisasi for curriculum 13 were from IPA. And most of the subjects in science use the scientific method. So whenever they give sosialisasi to teachers, including teachers of English, they said, this one, scientific method. We do not have scientific method in our nomenklatur pengajaran bahasa Inggris. We don't have. We do have genre-based method. We do have the communicative-based teaching, and we do have some other based teaching, or even post-method pedagogy, but we don't have scientific method. And unfortunately, mohon maaf, some pengawas in the past, all right, menelan mentah-mentah, okay, it has to be scientific method. Who are the teachers then? Because they have to adapt from the genre-based approach or from the communicative-based approach to this scientific method. And sometimes it's pretty difficult. And the hardest part is when you are teaching PLPK, because they keep complaining, pengawasnya mintanya kayak gini, but the lecturers insist that nggak boleh pakai gini. So how can we make a bridge? How can we bridge these problems? So if whenever I had this PLPG, I always told them bikin dua, satu versi scientific, satu versi genre-based approach. That should be the best solution. It's not that difficult, I mean, to change the procedure actually. I hope that answers your question, Pak Rudi. Are you teaching in Tarakan? Oh, he cannot unmute himself. Yeah, my brother and my sister are also English teachers in Tarakan and SMP. I cannot remember SMP berapa Tarakan. Yeah, and some of my students are now from Tarakan as well, Kaltara. Yeah, so yeah. All right, thank you, Pak Rudi. Yeah, do we have some more questions from Pak Rudi? 2 questions from Pak Rudi. Yeah, I answered them already. So, yes. Well, I mean, politically, I don't have the capacity to answer Pak Rudi's question. But yes, if we use our logic, then yeah, we can still use these 2 curriculum, and we can still adapt curriculum Merdeka in our classroom, especially in terms of the differentiated learning. Differentiated learning is something, it's actually not something new, but it has been out there sometimes, but there aren't many studies on it. So it would be another good topic for you to research. Let's say teachers' understanding of differentiated assessment or differentiated learning in English. So it's a good topic. Whether they have this perspective or not, then you can dig it up. Okay, thank you, Bu Desi.
Thank you, Bapak. Now, this is a question from Ibu Darli, Bapak. Teachers as students partner, Bapak. Thank you, Bapak.
Yeah, involving teachers, thank you, Bu Desi. Involving students in the criteria, in making the criteria and standard. Yes, this is what I normally do at the uni, but I think you also adopt it at school. So, for instance, I'm teaching these master students like you. So, in our first meeting, I normally gave them the syllabus, and then my first question: do you think that this syllabus is too simple, or just yes, or it is too much for you? Then some of them will say, "All right, but we need to have this one." Because let's say in assessment, I am teaching ELT assessment and evaluation. So in assessment, for instance, I gave them the syllabus or the RPS, and then they will say, but we need to also learn about how to do item analysis using some programs. So could you also provide another session on this? Okay, then we'll discuss it. Okay, and another example is about the final project. I normally give them a final project on the things that they already learned in the classroom. If it is in assessment, they have to first write the blueprint of their instrument. And then the second one, they have to write the items. And then the third one, they have to go to an expert to have the items or the instrument judged. And then the next one, they have to go to the field to have the tryout. And then they do item analysis and reporting the results. So 5 or 6 or 7 different things by the end of the semester. So because I normally do not give a test to my students, the test is in the form of in the form of this project. I do hope that answers your question. I'm pretty sure that if you do it at school, then yes, you can also modify that for students. Because but the thing is, if you are teaching students at elementary level or early learners, you can't do that because they don't even know what they are doing. That's the biggest challenge. That's why I always say 2 thumbs up, kalau perlu 4 thumbs up for teachers of education, early education. Because most of the times your children will not believe in you, they will believe in their teachers. My little son, whenever I explain Bahasa Inggris to him, he always says, Ustadzahnya nggak bilang itu. That's what he said. Loh, aku itu gurunya guru, dosen itu gurunya guru. Enggak, guruku bilangnya gitu. All right, that's the end of the discussion. Okay, over to you, Bu Desi. Thank you.
Thank you, Bapak. Now the last question for the last session, Bapak. Question from Pak Marlin. Saying the assessment by using question and answer, Bapak. The question is how to encourage students asking question, Bapak.
All right, thank you, Pak Marlin. A good question. So, Pak Marlin, I remember that there was a book named Threshold Level or something. So this book teaches us that whenever we want to make our students involved in our teaching, the first thing that we need to do is telling them or having them, inviting them to get close to us by providing them something that they already know. Okay, for instance, for anak SMA zaman now, for instance, Bapak Ibu, something that they are familiar with, that they are really love is drakor, for instance. So you may want to start the question from this kind of drakor, some topics, just trying to get their attention, just trying to get their interest in learning. Then you link this drakor to your topic. For instance, if you are teaching about describing people, then yes, of course, it gets along with how Yoon Min looks like, or how So Hyun Ki or something looks like. So we start from something that is really close to our students' life. For instance, you are teaching about procedure, and you may want to ask them about what they did, what they had for their breakfast. Did they make the breakfast themselves, or did they buy it? If they made the breakfast themselves, did they like it, or do they like it? And how did they make the breakfast? It's an example of a simple procedure. It's a kind of question and answer, and then inviting students to ask questions whenever they are close to us, whenever they are involved in the teaching and learning process, involved actively, then this kind of involvement will trigger them to ask questions. You cannot ask them to ask questions if they do not want to get involved in the teaching and learning process. So once they are involved in your teaching and learning process, they will find it interesting, they will feel happy, then they will get involved and ask you questions. Okay, thank you, Bu Desi.
Thank you, Bapak. Now we come to the questions from the chat box, Bapak. The first question is from Ibu Glenda Mutia, Bapak. Bu Glenda asks, does it mean that assessment must be done intimately, person to person, but it will take time too, Pak?
Yes, thank you, Bu Desi. Well, that's why I told you that being a teacher is not easy. being a teacher is a really, really complex job, Bapak Ibu. Belum lagi kalau kita ngajarkan dosa jariah, it's really complex. See, we are teaching dosa. Some of our teachers are teaching dosa jariah. Just like what I mentioned just now, my students, her teacher said river. And at home, when I said not river, a river, he said no. So it means that the teacher teaches dosa jariah, because my son will tell her little sister, this is a river, not a river. And on and on and on. This is dosa jariah. So, well, going back to Glenda Mutia's question. Well, it's an excellent question. But yes, we do have to, I'm not going to call it intimately, but I'm going to call it an intensive assessment process. But this kind of intensiveness will also have to be effective, because you cannot spend 10 minutes per student to assess your students in one meeting, because you only have like 90 minutes, then you can only assess 9 students. So you, from let's say a big observation, I mean, a quick look at your students' performance, activeness, and then you can judge. All right, Pak Arif is a really excellent student because he asks questions and then he's active. Pak Rudi has got very critical questions, and then Budarli has got very challenging questions, and so on. So then from this kind of assessment, day by day, you make notes. That's why we are suggested to have notes in Kurikulum Merdeka, right? Actually, from Kurikulum Zaman Bahula, we also are required to have these notes. And these notes are actually the one that is mentioned by Anne Burns as field notes. Mungkin ya Bapak Ibu, in classroom excellent research, we do have field notes. Actually, this kind of notes are the field notes. So teachers have an abundant source of information if they want to conduct classroom excellent research, because they have everything in the classroom. The source of the data, the information from the students, then they have all the access to the students. So actually saya ngiri to teachers because they can do classroom excellent research at any time. Walaupun di kampus juga bisa. All right, thank you, Bu Desi. I'm sorry, I think you are muted, Ibu.
Okay, we proceed to the next question, Bapak. From Bapak Alifiandi Naufal Rafli. How can assessment be designed to be engaging and relevant to the students? And how can it be tailored to meet students' diverse learners while maintaining the given time for the teachers to teach, Bapak? Can you give us strategies and know how to teach? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bapak. Thank you, Bu Desi. So it's a very complex and an excellent question. Yeah. Well, let me check if I do have that slides. Do I prepare them? Okay, so I think I have to dig, but it may take some time. So this one, Baba, if the question is related to how can we make assessment interesting? Yes, I think it has got something to do with the question related to the threshold level. Make sure that the assessment itself has got something to do with the students' real life, at least something that they bump into every day. You cannot design an assessment with a topic that the students are not familiar with, because they will not be interested in the assessment itself. For instance, you are teaching, you are assessing students, you are asking students to answer some questions related to kereta api when they never see kereta api but through YouTube only. They might not be interesting. I mean, they might not be interested in the kereta api itself because they didn't see it physically. It's pretty different, ya Bapak Ibu. You meet person physically and you meet it through Facebook or through Zoom. Let's say another example is you have a thesis supervision through Zoom, and physically to meet your supervisor, it's pretty different. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure UT has got many different programs to help you, to assist you with this kind of problem. So going back to the question, yeah, start from something that they are close to, but it has to be also starting from the simple point. You cannot ask your students, you cannot start the assessment from something that is too complex for them to digest. Start from very simple. What is it? If it is a project, then start from a simple project. If it is, for instance, portfolio, then let's say within one semester you have 7 assignments. Then assignment 1 should be the easiest one. Assignment 2 should be a bit more difficult. Assignment 7 should be the hardest of the rock, for instance. So yeah, the grading or graded from if it has something to do with differentiated learning, then you start from activities which are fully guided, and then activities which are semi-guided, and then the last activity should be free guided. Yeah, I do have that answers the question, Ibu Desi.
Okay, Bapak. The next question is from Ibu Destri Mairoza. The question is, I usually ask my students to make a note in the final meeting for each KD, basic competence, Bapak. In the note, they may write freely about the learning process. It can be about the material, the way I teach them, their difficulties, their favorite part of the learnings, and so on. There can be correction for my teaching strategy or knowing which student need more attention in learning. I have done it since my first year as the teacher, but haven't known the name of it. Can I say I've done AFL? Thank you, Bapak.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Desi. A very interesting question from Ibu Destri, Bu Destri and Bu Desi. Yeah. So very interesting question, Bu Destri. Thank you. Well, it is part of assessment for learning, Ibu, actually. That's why I mentioned early in this talk that most of us are already actually conducting assessment for learning, but we just don't know, probably don't know about the name. Yeah, it is. Well, if we have a look at, if we go back to the concept of assessment learning, then Bapak Ibu, excuse me, Bapak Ibu can find that the main mission of assessment for learning is to help students learn better. Whenever we give to our students, whatever feedback we give to our students, whatever explanation, whatever project we give to our students, is to help them to grow better. And if your feedback helps them to grow better, to recognize their weaknesses, and then to improve their skills, to cover their, or to eliminate the weaknesses, then you are already practicing assessment for learning. And at the same time, you can also be practicing assessment as learning when you ask your students to critically think about what they can do, for instance. And then it will help them to trigger their self-regulated learning. What do you need to do? Search for this one. Then for these exercises, then you will find some other examples of how to cope with this problem, for instance. Yes, Bu Destri, you are already conducting part of the assessment for learning. Thank you, Bu Desi.
Thank you, Bapak. And this is the last one, Bapak. But it's not a question, but this is a request. Professor Nur, I'm Andri from UPBJJ Bandung. Could you give us a simple rubric to assess writing tasks? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ibu. Well, Bapak Ibu, I'm pretty sure that you can find an example of rubric to assess writing. It really depends on whether you want a holistic or analytical rubric, because they are pretty different. And the simplest one you can find in Brown's and Abiwikrama's book, 2018. I think it is sold online out there, or you can browse and download it if there are any. Sorry to say, but yeah, if you can find them in this book by Brown, then it would be excellent. But another example that you can use is the ones from standardized tests. So the biggest question or the main question is, has something to do with your intention, whether you want to use the scale by IELTS, by TOEFL, I mean, test of written English, or the one by Brown, because they are pretty different. They, in terms of the different levels that they are using, because let's say in IELTS, we do have 9 bands, band 9 to band 9, band 1 to band 9, and in Brown, probably Brown only suggests 4 different things: accuracy, and then fluency, and so on, for instance. So they use different, different rubrics. Okay, but if you are interested in finding the one, I mean, the simplest one might be from Brown 2004, or Brown and Nabil Grammar 2010, or the latest one, if I'm not mistaken, we do have the one in 2018. But in assessing writing, yeah, there are some examples of the rubric, both analytical and holistic rubrics, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, thank you, Bu Desi.
Thank you, Bapak. That's the end of our question and answer session. So thank you very much for Pak Nur for all the enlightenment, and also for the participants who participate for this session. I would like to conclude a brief summary. The first one, this is what we learned at the beginning, that teaching is not simply about instruction, and assessment is not the same with testing. And the teacher has multitasking roles in an assessment. All right, so we come to the end of this agenda. I would like to convey thank you for and appreciation for Professor Nur Hidayanto Pancoro Setyo Putro, S.Pd, M.Pd, Ph.D, for the insight and knowledge to all of us. I do believe this is a very meaningful insight for us, Professor. Thank you very much. I would like also to convey thank you to Ibu Dr. Siti Julaiha MA and the management of postgraduate program Universitas Terbuka. I would like to deliver thank you to Ibu Dr. Johanna M.Pd, the head of postgraduate program of English education. And thank you very much for the committee for this public lecture event. And the last but not the least, thank you very much for the audience for attending this meaningful lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, please find the link to fill in the attendance and certificate information on the chat box. Please complete your full name and correct email address. And before our meeting ends, let's capture our memories with a photograph. Please turn your camera on. We will begin with the first photo, but please, the participant, please turn the camera on. We are going to have the photo session for this.
Ya, mohon izin Bapak dan Ibu, mohon dibuka kameranya. Nah, saya panitia akan mencoba capture satu-satu slide-nya. Di sini ada 5 slide. Slide yang pertama 1, 2, 3. Slide yang kedua 1, 2, 3. Slide yang ketiga 1, 2, 3. Slide keempat 1, 2, 3. Dan slide 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. Terima kasih.
Thank you. And once again, thank you for your participation and attention. Don't miss other interesting public lectures from postgraduate program of English education Universitas Terbuka. And since I start this event by a pantun, allow me to end this precious event with another pantun. Sungguh cantik si anak darah, kalau tersenyum memikat hati, kalau tersilap tutur kata, maaf dipinta sepenuh hati. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Prof. Nur. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Prof. Nur.
Terima kasih Bu Juana.
Terima kasih Bu Siti, juga terima kasih.
Ya. Terima kasih semuanya. Terima kasih Bu Desi ya.
Sehat selalu.
Kasih Prof, kasih Prof Nur, kasih Bu Desi.
Terima kasih semua mahasiswa, semangat ya.
Insya Allah, terima kasih Bu Julia. Ya, saya mohon izin untuk live ya Bu.
Silakan Prof. Terima kasih banyak.